Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the AI Security Vanguard Podcast presented by Trustero. Here we explore how today's security leaders are navigating the evolving landscape of AI, risk, and governance. As you can see, we have a new studio, so I'm expecting even more guests with more interesting discussions. Today's episode is one I've been waiting and been excited for. Joining us is Josh McKibben, Head of Compliance, Risk, and Trust at Snowflake. Josh has the hard role of helping define what practical, scalable, and secure use of AI in a forward-looking large enterprise looks like. We discuss everything from building AI policies that evolve with your business to how Snowflake uses its own AI models internally to save thousands of hours on security questionnaires, and the rising risks and realities of agentic AI and shadow access. Let's get to it. Hello, everyone. This is George again from CISO at Trustero. And today at the AI Security Vanguard podcast, we have Josh McKibben from Snowflake. I really look forward to this conversation. Josh, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, George. It's great to be with you. We have a fun past together, and I'm super happy you invited me to join today. So I lead our compliance, risk, and security trust functions at Snowflake. I've been at Snowflake for about 5 years, coming on 5 years. And before that, a 20-year history working in Silicon Valley with various tech companies in security trust and assurance type work. Largely with the big four, with PwC and KPMG, and a lot of kind of strategy and advisory and implementation operations type roles. But that's a little bit of my background.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. And we worked together at Snowflake. I actually worked in your organization, which was amazing. And one thing about my time there, I remember that you were very much involved in putting together the governance structure around AI. I know that you work with different teams, with legal, with finance, with engineering, with security, to kind of put a really, I would say, a very robust approach. Granted, AI is a very dynamic field at the moment, but we have to start somewhere. And I think you had a great approach. You came up with a really good idea. So can you talk a little bit more about how you approach the problem around governance and how what are the principles that you established? And just kind of as a side way, I think that this is something that is currently missing at the moment. A lot of companies are jumping into the AI without thinking about governance, where governance should be the leading factor.
Yeah, it's a tricky question in that, let me maybe tell you a little bit about the kind of the history here of what we've been doing. So I would say our first pass at AI governance was legal and my team kind of working together to try and review every AI use case and every AI technology that corporate or anyone else in the environment wanted to use. And I think at first, there was just a lot of trying to understand the use cases that are happening, right? To get a handle on the visibility of the various use cases. And I would say that was an okay place to start, right? It was sufficient to get visibility in terms of all the ways that the company was using and wanted to use AI. I would say it wasn't scaling very well because you had legal and security compliance people really trying to review every use case and contract. And we really realized, man, if we want to support the agility and the speed of innovation while also protecting and making sure we're in a comfortable and appropriate, I guess, risk posture, right? We needed to figure out ways to scale that better. So I guess one of our first kind of things was we had the process running, but then we said we gotta write a policy. We got to get the policy right, a combination of legal as well as security compliance requirements. The next part of the governance was on the vendor side, which was more of the onboarding of tooling and technology. And you can imagine, I think maybe your experience is similar, but everyone that had an existing vendor or SaaS solution that they were using all of a sudden is now introducing AI.
Everybody wants AI,
and functionality. And then we had the actual consumption and adoption and use of AI, native AI type tooling that was starting to come in as well. And so part of that governance process evolved to, we have to really rapidly address our vendor risk management, our procurement functions to make sure that we're looking at the risks associated with AI, and that we had terms and conditions in place, but we're also starting to ask the vendors tough questions, like from
Hmm.
the EU AI Act or the NIST
Right.
framework or these other frameworks. So that was like the beginning, kind of 1, 2, and 3 steps of our governance model. And I think I would say it kind of culminated when we got our ISO 42001 certification, which laid out a set of really specific kind of governance requirements that helped us kind of then take what we had built and evolve it further to now be working a lot closer with our AI engineering teams, for example, and making sure that we're getting proper documentation in place around the models that are being used and model cards, right? The implementation of model cards as a core governance function was something critical that we needed, and we started implementing that as well, which gave people visibility into the models being used and the underlying data sets and assumptions about those models. So I'll kind of pause there. I'm sharing a lot of different ideas, George, but we've obviously evolved a lot. We now have very senior level, AIs at the center of our strategy. Data, we're the AI data cloud, where data does more.
Yes.
So we
Yep.
have CEO level and SVP of engineering level alignment on these key strategic decisions that we're doing around AI as well. I'll get into some of that if you want, but that's a little bit about some of the governance modeling that we put in place to help us on our path.
So what I'm getting at, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that was very practical. You recognize that the field is changing, and you look at the kind of a practical approach. And also the other thing is that you had the support from the top. I think nothing could happen without the support of the executive suite. So how do you kind of balance this thing? Because every time when we talk about the governance, including AI governance, people are thinking, oh, this is something very rigid, very formal. At the same time, you have this AI which is moving really fast, and I'm sure that the enumeration through the use cases that you started, I don't know, 2 years ago, and the use cases that you have now are quite different. So how do you think about having the governance structure adapt to the changes?
Yeah. Well, that's tough because it's changing so fast. I mean, every day is a new, use case or technology almost, or a new application of the technology in new ways. So it's pretty challenging, especially in an environment where you want the full benefits of innovation at scale and at speed.
Yeah.
And you have a risk tolerance and risk posture that you need to maintain, right? We have contractual requirements and security compliance commitments, and obviously protecting our customers' data is the utmost importance to us. So I think your question is like, how does the model evolve? Is that what
Right.
you're asking? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I view it kind of similar to some of the technology paradigms in the past, although AI is different, right? I think back to, do you remember, like, I don't know, I guess it's maybe 10 or 15, maybe 20 years ago now, 15 years ago, when cloud,
Oh yeah.
SaaS, PaaS,
We're dating
IaaS,
ourselves now.
yeah, really came out. Everyone is like, how do you keep people from going into the wrong ones, right?
Yeah.
How do you put guardrails in place with security standards to guide those that are going? And so I guess when it comes back to keeping pace, I mean, I think one of the things is, once we set up some of the key processes, like with the model card documentation, right, within our engineering function, it becomes a lot easier now to have
Uh-huh.
visibility and transparency from a privacy, legal, and security perspective with what the team's doing in that area. So governance in that area is more so now coming in and doing some audits, making sure that the model card process is working appropriately, right? So the
Yeah.
nature of the governance changes as we get more mature in the control sets that we're working on.
So I guess that feedback is really important, because you have the model cards, you see how the use cases evolve, and then you can go and make decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And I think also, like, on the corporate side, at first, again, it's kind of like, people are consuming ChatGPT. Well, is ChatGPT approved, and do we have the proper protections in place for that? If not, what's a redirect to an
Yeah.
enterprise secured kind of equivalent, right? That's kind of
Yeah.
a governance decision-making model there. And then once you realize, wow, we actually want access to multiple models in secured ways, then the governance, this isn't about blocking people from going out to the
Right.
wrong ones. It's about getting more strategic redirect into securely protected and comfortable, environments and and models, right? And making those available. A good example is, pushing people to use LLMs hosted in or in Snowflake itself
Yeah.
as the primary way of exploring what we want to do from an engineering or other perspective within AI. Snowflake is a secured environment, right? It's a secure platform.
Yes.
We feel much better about our engineers and our corporate teams going and using Snowflake with its underlying LLMs embedded, because all of the data is in a protected environment for us. So things like that is part of the governance as well, which is, again, pointing people towards comfortable, guardrailed, sanctioned off, and somewhat secure, more secure places to play around and develop and work on AI. So I'll kind of pause there, but those are just some of the thoughts.
Yeah. One thing that I remember with my days in Snowflake was that one of the philosophy was make it easier to do the right thing and making it harder to do the wrong thing. So in a way, if you can create a highway to get to the internal tools that are secure, that we know their risk posture, and showing how they perform competitively to the external tools, and at the same time you have a windy, difficult road to the external tools, that means that more of the people are going to steer towards the easy path. And if that easy path gets them the result that they expect, then I guess that's kind of the role of the governance, to make it easier to do the right thing.
Yeah. No, I think you're right on there. And one thing came to mind as you were chatting, which is, yes, like steer them towards, kind of blessed and pre-approved and contractually aligned and security vetted type solution spaces, right? They can work on AI, but then also be ready to move and pivot really quick when, your engineering leadership and others say, hey, we want to explore and work on this particular AI model or LLM model.
Yeah.
And so we really don't, we want to be able to do that. And so a good example of that is to say, okay, great. How can we use that model in an architectural context that's similar to one we've already viewed blessed before, right? And it's not just about going out and using external internet-facing, APIs, right? Because so a lot of that is leveraging some of our AWS architecture, and on I think it's Bedrock is what it's called. And so if you've got different models in place and arrangements and contracts in place, as well as security architecture reviews that have worked for other models, we try and put the new innovations that people are wanting to push for into those patterns that kind of work. And we work really a lot around the clock to try to make sure we're comfortable with the security and the risk and the compliance terms and conditions that need to be in place for us to use these tools from a pilot as well as a production context.
And the other thing is that you're kind of drinking your own champagne, you're using your governance. I know that you're using AI in your team, for example, answering questionnaires. How is that journey? I mean, how helpful it is? Does it bring you the expected efficiency? Any interesting things? Like, this is a typical example of how you use AI in the risk and compliance in the security space. So I'm really interested to hear how you're using it for answering questionnaires.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's like, I think everyone in security and compliance is, there's 2 or 3 angles to this. It's like, hey, we know that bad actors are going to use AI to attack us. We know that we need to use AI to prevent and respond, and we also need to use AI to get much more efficient at scale within security and compliance, right? And I think kind of what we've looked at ways to do that, and we have had some really good success on the third use case, I would say, right? Which is taking our business processes and kind of turning them on their heads a little bit with AI. So the example you shared was, when it comes to our customer questionnaires, we get thousands and thousands of questionnaires a year. We need to answer them in a timely manner and an accurate manner, helping our customers feel comfortable and confident that, Snowflake has our internal controls that are provable, and, get their security teams comfortable, right? And we saw a really perfect opportunity there to say, hey, we have all of our certified reports, right? We have over, 30, 40, I know it's growing all the time, certifications, including SOC 1 and 2, but global certifications. And those are official third-party audited and tested documentation.
With a lot of details.
With lots of details. And it's validated, confirmed, third-party assured details. We saw a lot of opportunity and say, well, what if we took Cortex, which is Snowflake's LLM, pointed at a controlled set of data, specifically our certification reports and our authorized official policy statements that we use for audit purposes. And then what if we can then just plug in these questionnaires that we're getting to have AI generate answers using those 2 data sets that are fairly controlled in a fairly controlled environment. And we saw great results. Okay, so the first iteration was we were getting good answers, but the answers were low accuracy, and we had to give a
Yeah.
lot of feedback to the engine of how to tune the RAG part of it so that we're getting higher quality, less less reviews required coming out of that. And right now we're about 95% accuracy coming out of those questionnaires. We've reduced the amount of human time necessary just responding to and answering questionnaires by, we're saving thousands of hours in that space. So we're very pleased with the practical application of AI in a business process context to answer risk-based, control-specific, nuanced questions. So we're pretty excited about that and looking at ways we can take that same model and apply it to lots of our compliance and risk management processes. Like vendor risk analysis is a great
Yes.
that we're working on right now. So
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
share.
that's interesting. So we're working in the same space in a way. I mean, trying to use that one, and we also have a questionnaire. And similar to you, we kind of rag it with the information that is available to our customers, and we unleash the AI on it. And there is a lot of prompting going on, a lot of tricks like making sure that it doesn't hallucinate and all those kind of things. But one thing that we are hearing from our customers, kind of a side effect, actually in one of my previous roles. So questionnaires are kind of a necessary evil. So we don't like them. They're mundane. They're kind of a repeatable task. You cannot just put somebody from the street. You have to have an expert actually answering those questions. And let's be honest, it's not very intellectually stimulating work. So that is kind of all of that combination put it as a perfect location for an AI where you can really define the problem. It's a repeatable, mundane work that it can do day in and day out, and gaining efficiency absolutely. But one other interesting thing that we're hearing from our customers about the Siberia of the security department is that it increases employee satisfaction.
Mm.
So you can take those people who are kind of doing 95% of the work and get them some more intellectually stimulating, more interesting work to do. So there's certain side effects that we are going to see from the deployment in AI in the security business. Right, so that is kind of a interesting thing, and it is a side effect.
Absolutely. Can I comment
Uh,
on that real quick?
yes, please. I was
Yeah.
going to ask you, what do you think about that?
Well, first, you're so right. I mean, I think there's a number of process areas that across all businesses, right? But where
Yeah,
you still have manual involvement. Look, we had an automation and data first approach strategy, right? For ever since I've been
long
here,
time.
kind of the
Yeah,
foundation of Snowflake is to do that. So it's not like applying AI is like, the first time we're thinking about automation and data driven kind of outcomes and processes. But to be able to do the analytical part of our jobs, I think is a key differentiator, right? We were applying automated workflows and data
yeah,
driven insights before, but now with the AI piece, we have human assisted reasoning, right? And analysis against these data sets that really, I think is, to your point, it's a differentiator. And we're seeing people that, have kind of been in the same role, doing the same kind of things for just probably too long, kind of lighting up with the opportunities of leveraging AI to help them get faster, better answers, quicker answers, and then, like you said, do higher value or more interesting or different work, figuring out how to leverage AI for other problems as well. So absolutely.
so what I was saying was that in unfortunately, a lot of the press coverage that we see in regards to AI deployment is related to, oh, we're gonna lay off 1,000 people or something like that. Whereas I think the real approach should be, hey, you're removing the mundane part of their job and you're trying to find a more interesting, more intellectually stimulating part of them, because those people are already in the organization. They went through the training. They understand the culture. They understand the environment. So actually, that's a great opportunity for additional improvement, not just kind of reducing the workforce.
Yeah, I think that, look, I've gone through probably some of the same emotional ups and downs as most people on AI, like oh my gosh, this is going to be the best thing since sliced bread and make everything better, to the, oh my gosh, will I have a job tomorrow and what will my children do, right, in the
Yeah.
future? And then the moral, like, questions around whether that's the right thing to do for humanity and for society. And I mean, I'm of the position now where it's like it's inevitable that AI is here. Um, I think people are overstating AI's ability to solve core, maybe I'll call it like core process problems, right? Or core strategic problems. It
Yeah.
helps with those. But and fundamentally, there's no AI without a really good data, right? Platform, right? That's kind of our position, is that you can't have AI without good data.
Right.
And getting good data, I think, will be helped with AI, but there's still a lot of wonderful work, amazing work, challenging work for many, many years to come for people in our world to understand and contextualize risk, to help with the analysis, to set up the business processes, to run those processes and check in on our AI and make sure the AI is running the processes within the parameters that we've set. And I'm just super bullish. I mean, I know our CIO came out recently, Mike Blandina. He's awesome, wonderful. Been in the seat, I think, 3 or 4 months now at Snowflake. And we just launched an AI for everyone, is what it's called. And
Yeah.
as a product, we've had AI at the core for many years, and we're a leader in that space. But I love what he's been doing and we've been doing as a leadership team to set up a training path for everyone in enterprise technology and the finance orgs, a lot of these back office orgs that are kind of slower to learn and adopt some of these AI capabilities, setting up a very clear training and learning path of the basics, as well as how to build your first AI app in Snowflake, right? So there's some basic challenges that everyone in the company is getting challenged to go do right now, which I think is a really great way to say we support you. We're going to pay everybody to go and learn the basics and to learn making sure we're using kind of Snowflake and other tooling in the core day-to-day job. And then I've set some OKRs for my team to say, I want a one-page strategy for each of your functions of how we're going to transform with AI, going forward. Now we have a uniform base under our belt, right? Of how this.
Right.
So I don't know, what have you seen there, and about the training piece and the enablement piece within the workforce?
Yeah, that is definitely, I actually applaud you for that, for people to start thinking about how AI is going to transform the way they're doing business in the security space. We're not talking much about that. We're talking more on the technical side, but inevitably that is going to change. I was on a panel probably a month ago. That was on the focus on the panel, and I was really blown away by some of the things that people think, how the role of the CISO, for example, is going to change, how the role of the security organization, and one of the panelists actually there was making an argument that in the past the CISO have been largely technical roles, and in the past probably 5-10 years it started changing to expand more to be also a business role, like you're running a business unit and you have to interact with other parts of the business, and especially when you're talking to the executive, to the board, you have to present the security not so much as a technology, but as a business. And now the argument was that using AI is going to even accelerate more that transition, because a lot of the kind of, again, the mundane things are going to be taken over the AI. So we still need to focus on how we're running the business. Which that kind of leads me to another question that I had for you. Yes, we are giving this tool to pretty much everyone in the organization. And that kind of leads me to the question for agentic AI. Like we were talking about generative AI, and now the buzzword today is agentic AI. In fact, there was a conference a week ago here in Santa Clara about agentic AI. It was a very interesting one. I remember, and you referred to it as well, when the cloud became a thing. And there were a lot of concerns around shadow IT. Like I can put my SaaS on my credit card and I'll start exchanging secretive company data and you won't even know about it.
Yeah.
So I don't think we solved that problem, but at least we understood it and we have some tools that can help us. Google, for example, was talking about zero trust concept, and that is still valid today. But now, if we give people the ability to create agents, isn't that the same thing over, but on steroids? Because now the agents can behave on their own. They assume the identity. In most cases, they assume the identity of the person who created that agent, and they can start communicating to each other, making decisions on behalf of the person who created those agents. So it's even more complicated than what happened with the shadow IT. So what are your thoughts on the shadow AI?
Yeah, I think even before cloud, I don't know if you remember like the microservices movement.
Yes.
An
Yeah.
application,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
decomposing applications into microservices and having your microservices buses and your API gateways, right? That was a big, probably multi-year shift in technology development and the way we deliver application
Right.
services. And when I think about, kind of where we're headed with the agentic AI, on one hand, it's like it almost feels like a resurgence of, all these APIs connecting and interacting with each other, which has always been the case, right? But since
Yeah.
the kind of the microservices world, right, that's kind of where we've been playing, and then cloud kind of just formalized that a little bit more of where we're hosting those backend services and exposing those APIs. Yeah, I think with agentic AI, there's a couple of challenges here as I see it, right? One is you can build an agent that goes and does stuff for you. And there's lots of places that are offering that as a platform, right? Including your
Yeah.
own laptop, right?
Yep.
Your backend laptop. I think you can go do that with your chat GPTs of the world. You have the, I guess is MCP, I think is what it's called. The
Right. The
AI
protocol.
kind of
Yeah.
server models that are easy to pull together, and then you run those, and they're running on your laptop or in any hosted environment, and then now they're running out and doing calls and doing tasks for you on the back end, right? And I think a couple thoughts there, right? One, there's a lot of challenges with agentic AI development. We look at it as we want to enable our engineers and our customers to be able to build agentic models. There's some security foundationals that aren't figured out yet, right? I think one of
Yeah.
the key ones that we keep thinking about is access and authentication. And if I, as a corporate user or a security compliance user, even want to go build an agent that looks at audit records and pulls together reports and emails them to people, I could build my own little app that does my day job for me, but I
Yeah.
have to put in my credentials for those into that. And so, this kind of exacerbates the whole secure service account, secure workload authentication problem that already exists outside of AI, right?
Right.
And the questions are, do you use your personal email and your personal credentials for those? Or as an organization, do you bless the backend systems and APIs that your agent will be calling to only use enterprise approved services? And at which case you need to provide both human as well as managed service identities. And I think that's, most organizations are struggling already with privileged access in the non-AI world. But then
Right.
to say all of a sudden you're throwing agentic AI develop at it, it's like you've got to be able to scale that and figure that out pretty quick. So look, I think we're working on that. I think we're working through kind of a transition from let's just make sure with AI, people have access to AI to do their jobs. Let's make sure developers have access to AI to do enhanced coding. To now, we have to build frameworks and guardrails around where we're going with. We want our developers and our back office people to be able to do agentic development of their own to help with their day jobs. We don't have it solved. We're working on it. There's a lot of kind of late breaking thinking on this and a lot of tooling that's coming up in this space as well. So we're definitely kind of working on that. And I don't have the answers, but it's going to be a really interesting place from a security guardrails perspective, and more so enforcement. It's like
Yes.
once you come up with a policy of how it should be done, short of using your network proxies and your endpoint proxies and blocking people from going to certain places, like you got to give them a good blessed environment to do this in with a set of associated LLM, APIs on the back end that are secured or that are blessed, or have the tooling in place to monitor for that, audit for that. You got to log for all of that because you got to prove at
Yep.
the end of the day what was shared and not shared, right? Because in the court of law and others, when you have to do your forensics investigation, all of those are challenges that we got to go figure out.
Yeah, and there are many kind of auxiliary problems to this one. For example, as you mentioned, do we use different credentials for the agent versus the human who created the agent? Because in a lot of cases, me as a human, I already have access to those systems. So creating another set of access for an agent for another identity is going to be challenging, and it's going to be it's going to be difficult, right? So the path of least resistance is going to be I'm creating this assistant and let them run under my identity and do whatever it needs to do. And then there is, if we're going to do that, then the old Turing test problem comes in. Like, okay, if I'm a system and I'm replying to requests, how do I differentiate between something that comes from a human versus something that comes from an agent? And I don't know if you heard yesterday, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, had a very interesting talk. I think it was a Fed conference. It was a financial conference. And he was talking about what are we going to do with identity? Because a lot of our controls in security rely on properly identifying the subject, whether that's a human or a service. But with all the deep fakes that are coming, especially now, that puts a big question in the technology space, but also in the interpersonal space. Like, for example, how do I know that I'm talking to Josh right now? I'm not talking to an avatar of Josh, and that avatar may be sanctioned by Josh, and Josh created the agent, or maybe somebody else that I don't even know. And obviously, we cannot live in a world that we can constantly authenticate everything. So, what is the balance between those two? That's an interesting question.
Wow. Yeah. No, I think that is very interesting. It's an authenticity question,
Yes.
It's a repudiation question, which has existed in the internet for a long time, which is proving the asserter, right? It has control of the token. Not just has control of the token, but the person who says they have control of the token is the actual person who
is that
the initial authentication or the representing of the actual agent that's represented. Yeah, definitely a lot of interesting and challenging things coming. Again, many of which kind of blow my mind from a security compliance perspective. I would say, I think of it like this. Like I think keeping tabs on the risks that are actually at your door versus the ones that could be at your door, I think is the $1 million kind of strategic thinking that security and compliance people need to be applying, right? Because whether or not a deep fake, AI generated deep fake is happening and could be used to try and get you to control or do something you don't want to do or you shouldn't be doing in your organization, we know it's possible, right?
Right.
But is it happening in your organization? I don't know. We see examples popping up, but I know my team, for example, we were contemplating whether we wanted to do like a deep fake, identification
phishing?
kind of, exactly, a training module yet, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like, well, yeah, it's possible, but I think we've got bigger fish to fry than telling everyone in the company, how to potentially spot a deep fake. And that's just my take, right? In terms of risk and reward, right? The likelihood and the impact of these different attacks we're seeing. We still think that it's probably more important to be focusing on strong authentication, 2FA, service account,
Vuln management.
Vuln management, the basic blocking and tackling is still important and still is primarily the most important thing we could be doing while we know that the technology is evolving around us quickly. And I think that's always a challenge. I know I've been in this space for a long time and we call it chasing the shiny object. It's like companies want to go spend tooling and money on technologies around a problem that someone says is important. And it's like, we don't have all the money in the world. We don't have all the time in the world. We've got to consistently be applying to the right risks at the right time and the growth and the risk tolerance of your business. And I think that's where there's a lot of value for experienced security and risk people to be able to play that role, right? And help with that.
I actually really like that because, we're living in very dynamic, very uncertain environment, but there are certain things that are kind of a bedrock and they're still valid, like a solid risk management framework, like what you're saying. What is the risk? What is the reward? What is the likelihood? What is the impact? So that no matter cloud, the AI, whatever, that hasn't changed. That is still valid. So if we understand the framework, if we apply it properly, then we'll be okay.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't make it easier, but it helps to focus on the right problem. Like let's talk about the fundamental problem of corporate AI, at least in my mind, is, your data could leak into these AI services and you may not have protections legally, right? Or worse, the security controls are such that the model on the other end could potentially train and expose the data
Yeah.
that's leaked in an unauthorized way from your environment. I mean, in terms of business exposure, that's still one of the primary issues. It's a data loss issue, right? That we're not
Yeah.
comfortable letting the data go in those ways. But as soon as you put in place some comforts, either contractually or other, with the entities on the other end, it's like, well, what's the next biggest problem, right? Well, the next biggest problem is probably, at the end of the day, access, internal to the organization. Like we see like, certain teams wanting to use, like, let's go search everywhere in our environment with AI type tools. And we're like, well, we still have least privilege as a concept. How do we apply least privilege in the construct of people wanting to use AI to search all repositories everywhere, right? There's privacy issues that we still have to solve for. So I think some of those are some of the more fundamental security and risk concerns we still need to be dealing with, even though deepfakes is super important.
Yeah. And I really like to kind of try to leverage existing technologies, existing techniques. So to your example with searching everything with the AI, would you bring an intern and just give them keys to the kingdom and search all of your data repositories? No. So why would you like to do it with the external AI? I mean, it's the same logic there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like content management systems have been around for a long, long time, right? I mean,
right.
There used to be even like, 10 years ago, let's put API hooks into all of our key data repositories and let people search them, right? That's not new.
Yeah.
But what's new is that you have an intelligent interface on the other end asking really robust questions. And so now that problem statement looks like it's new for everybody, but it's the same thing we've always had, which is at the end of the day, who do you want to have access to the data underlying, the AI agent that's running on your behalf? And we have people all of a sudden think, some people saying, hey, it's so worth it, right? Our ability to access any information we have, right, within an environment through an AI interface is worth the risk that we might be willing to take. And again, that's where the role of security and risk is always been, but it's even more so important is to remind people we have legal, we have moral, we have ethical responsibilities, we have policies, external facing, we have stakeholders. All of our customers and stakeholders are expecting us to uphold a super high level of integrity and protection. And so as much as we want to move quick and break things and learn as we go, we also obviously have to balance.
There are a lot of considerations that we have to put in place. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed this conversation, Josh. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I would say, I got asked on a panel the other day, like, where are we going, right, with AI in security and compliance? And, I didn't have a great answer. I think we're going places really fast. I think we're going to exciting places. I think the opportunity to apply AI into many of our daily jobs as CISOs and risk leaders is exciting. I keep thinking about the human engagement side. I mean, as much as technology and data drives a lot of what we do, at the end of the day, we're still a people-centric, culture, right? And I don't want personally technology to replace the role of
human
humanity,
interaction.
the human interaction side of things, right? Humans should always be in charge. Right? We shouldn't be delegating that, in my mind, off to tooling and agents. So what I would say in closing is something like, one, we got to learn the technology. The technologies are moving so fast, and the companies that support them, and we're one of them, right? So we want to do so in a very ethical, moral way. I would say it's a super imperative for security and risk people in particular to get as fast as you can up to speed on at least using AI in your daily life, getting comfortable with the risks and the issues around it, and be a vocal champion of what of learning the techniques and patterns that you can do to kind of secure it and make it a useful, risk appropriate tool for growing your businesses and your personal life. I think it's, we take that on, we're going to have a lot of opportunities ahead. I'm pretty excited about it.
Awesome. I like that. So we are in charge, and it's up to us to shape it the right way. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, George. Great seeing you again. Thanks for the time and the opportunity.
Thank you. That was such a great discussion with Josh. A few things I hope stood out for you. First, real AI governance is about creating trusted lanes and making it easier to innovate safely and quickly. Second, automation isn't just about saving time. It is re-energizing teams by removing the most mundane work and giving people space to do more impactful and intellectually stimulating things. And third, we need to get ahead of agentic AI risks now. Shadow IT and AI agents are a great opportunity, but they create a whole new level of exposure. In summary, AI in security and compliance is moving fast. But if you bring strong principles, top-down support, and bias for action, it doesn't have to be chaotic. We need to come up with new techniques and methodologies, of course, but we can still leverage an existing and proven risk-based foundation. Until next time, stay curious and stay secure.